Mercy Me is coming to Pittsburgh. The Together Again tour with Mercy Me, Crowder, and special guest Andrew Ripp. Thursday, October 5th. Bring your family and friends to the PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh for Mercy Me, Crowder, and Andrew Ripp live in concert. 3 multiple award-winning artists on one stage for one night. Let your spirit soar, your heart sing, and your faith ignite. Mark your calendars for Thursday, October 5th. Get your tickets now at mercyme.org.
The average household has 300,000 items in it. So when you think about that, most of us aren't hoarders when we think of like TV hoarders, but we are in some sense accumulating a lot of stuff. And that'd be fine if it was bringing us more joy and happiness and contentment and peace and tranquility. It's doing none of that.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Christy Wright Show, where faith meets personal development so you can have a bigger faith and a better life. I'm so excited because today we are talking about how to love your home and your life a whole lot more. And then later on in the show, I get to sit down with the minimalists, Joshua Milburn and Ryan Nicodemus, and we're going to talk about their new book, Love People, Use Things, and it's going to be a good one. But first, let's talk about how to love your home and your whole life a whole lot more. Well, I got to start by sharing an example with you that is pretty recent for me. I have not talked about this publicly, but my husband and I have decided to move. Now, I don't know if you've heard, but the housing market's a little insane right now. So we picked the worst timing imaginable to decide to move, but we feel ready. We've been saving up and we'd like a little bit more space for our family. So we've just been kind of like keeping an eye out. You know, not desperate, not crazy, not panicking, not freaking out. But for the last, year or two, we've just been watching the market, seeing if something comes on the market, keeping an eye out in the areas that we like, in the school zones that we like, and so on. Well, recently, as in, 3 weeks ago, we found a house that was perfect. Like, y'all, it checked every single box of everything I want. And I would consider myself a little picky at this point in my life. Like if we're gonna move our 47 kids, I have 3, but it feels like 47 sometimes. If we're gonna haul everybody to a new house and go through all the rigmarole of cleaning and packing and moving and all that, like it's gonna be because it's what we want. So I have this long list of things that I want in a new house, and we want a bigger garage, and we want an open concept floor plan, and some things that we don't have in our house right now. And y'all, this house checked every box. It was a beautiful flat lot. It even had room to grow and expand if you wanted to in the future. Like you could stay there a long time. Awesome neighborhood, awesome school zone, awesome location. Everything about it was awesome. It was even on a cul-de-sac, and I remember my husband telling me that growing up on a cul-de-sac, he loved it because he and his friends could play in the street and not have to really worry about a lot of fast traffic driving by. And I was like, well, that wasn't a box I wanted to check, but it's a bonus. It's a cul-de-sac. Like, I know that this is the house God is going to give us. This is it. This is for sure. This is a sign from heaven. This is supposed to be our house. So we go tour the house, and even as I'm walking inside, I'm like, we basically already live here. Like the Christmas tree's gonna go there. They'll take prom pictures right here on the stairs. Like I can see our entire future, and it's at this house. So we make an offer that morning, and we made a strong offer in this crazy market, and an offer that I was confident in. I was like, yeah, I know the market's crazy. We're gonna make a good offer. Like I really feel good about what we're doing. What it occurs to me in this moment on Saturday morning that we have just seen the house right after this, that if we get the house, if they accepted our offer, which we would find out on Monday, that we would need to list our house pretty quick with the craziness of the market, but Matt and I were going on vacation. So I was like, well, I'm not gonna have time to go on vacation, come back, and then do all that. Then I need to do it now, which means we need to clean our house and get it ready to sell in 2 days. Now, I don't know about you, but the thought of cleaning my house and getting it ready to sell in 2 days' time before I went back to work on Monday sounded like Mount Everest. Like this is an impossible task. But I was like, we can do it. I love a good challenge. We're gonna do it because we're not giving up our vacation. We're very excited about our vacation. So we're like, we're gonna do it. We send our kids our boys to Florence, Alabama at my in-laws' house, and they get to spend the weekend with Mimi and Pop, and we absolutely busted. I mean, I am just toys off the shelf, clothes, straightening, things are going in boxes, clutter is going in boxes, I'm turning this place into a museum, okay? I mean, like nothing on the countertops, nothing on the floors of the closets, because I know that if we're gonna list it, we've gotta take photos and all this has to happen really, really fast. So we get scrappy, we get creative, I start cleaning all the clutter, and I don't know about you, but like when we got this house 8 years ago and we didn't have any kids, we didn't have hardly anything. We were like, we'll never fill this house. And of course, 3 kids and lots of Christmases and birthdays later with 3 kids and lots of presents and toys. Even if you purge and get rid of stuff and send it to Goodwill, there's just stuff. There's more stuff than you realize you have till it's time to move. So we're cleaning, we're organizing, we're getting it all ready. I even asked my mom if I could bring some boxes and bins of random things, toys and miscellaneous things that I just wanted out of sight over to her house. I was like, can I just store them at your house for just a little bit while we get these photos so that we can list the house? Because again, we were for sure definitely getting this house. Like basically God told me. He didn't, but like I just, for sure, I had the Christmas tree spot. Like this was a done deal in my mind. Well, on Monday afternoon, right after I had finished cleaning up the garage, putting the last thing away for this house to be ready to show, I got the call that we didn't get it. And y'all, I was so sad. I was like, oh, but I thought for sure this was the one. I haven't seen a house yet that we wanted. This was it. And so we were bummed. But here's what happened after that. I kind of loved how my house looked. I kind of loved not having so much clutter around. I was like, how can we create some version of this to continue to live in? And y'all, since then, since I have not gone to my mom's house to get those bins back, I realized that we can live with a lot less. Now, I want to paint a picture for you in case you're getting the idea that I'm some kind of a hoarder. I'm not. I really clean stuff out, but it's amazing how much less you can live with if you do, if you try it. Not only that, how much less you want to live with once you've experienced it. So you know what? I got to tell you a secret. Don't tell my kids, okay? Those boxes aren't coming back, ever. They're just going to get escorted to Goodwill because we don't need them back in our house. We live fine without them. And my life is so much more full of space and margin and peace, not having stuff from kids and toys and 5,000 hats and a million different kid scissors and crafts and all this junk that we have to store and clean and organize and sort and keep up with and even just look at. Even just seeing it visually. This whole experience taught me something. Even though we didn't get the house that I thought for sure we wanted, even though we may move in the future, this experience, this exercise in working on getting my house cleaned and pared down and decluttered in 2 days taught me a lot about not only how much less I can live with, but how much less I want to live with. How much more I enjoy my home when there's less in it. How much more I enjoy my life when there's less clutter, less distractions, less junk, less toys, less things to clean, less things to organize, less things to keep up with, less things to even look at. Just seeing space, just seeing margin in my home has made a huge difference in not only how I feel about my home, but how I feel about my life. You know, it makes me think of a principle in design that some of you may be familiar with if you're graphic designers. Back when I was in college at the University of Tennessee, I was an advertising major, so we learned all about graphic design and creating great ads. And what most people think, if you're an amateur or you don't know design well, you haven't been trained, is you think cram all the crap on the page. You've seen those ads, right? Like in the newspaper or in magazines where it's those ads that just have like a million bold fonts, all caps, so many pictures and graphics and arrows and starburst, and it's just full of clutter. You don't know what the ad is advertising. You don't know what you're supposed to buy or do or look at or read because there's so much crap on the page. A principle in design is white space. Leave white space. leave blank space in your ad, because what happens is the white space makes the things that you put on there stand out. The white space is what makes the words that are actually there mean something. The white space shows you what's most important, which are the few design elements that are there. Those are the best ads. Those are the most effective ads. Those are the ads you want to look at and read, and you know exactly what you're supposed to do after looking at them. I wonder if the concept isn't true in our lives as well. Less might make the things that we have matter more. Less might enable us to enjoy the things that we have even more. So I don't know what this looks like for you, but at a minimum, I hope it encourages you to declutter this weekend. Pick one room. Pick one room and just decide, I'm going to declutter by 50%. Or maybe you pick one day and you're gonna just sweep through the house and get rid of a bunch of stuff you don't use, you don't look at, you don't need. It's just in the way. And no, you might not need to save it for one day. If you haven't touched that outfit since 1997, you're not gonna wear it this year. You're not going to. It's time for it to go. I don't know what it looks like for you, but I wanna encourage you to do something. Find a way to create less in your life so that you can enjoy your home and your life a whole lot more. Hey guys, I'm so excited because I get to sit down with the Minimalists. They are best-selling authors. Y'all know them from the documentary. Joshua Fields Millborn and Ryan Nicodemus. They have a new book called Love People, Use Things, because the opposite never works. Guys, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So I'm so excited about this because as we were just talking even off camera, this is a major struggle. Right. And you guys have seen it for over a decade as you have helped people through your documentary, through your multiple best-selling books, and now you have this new book. But before we even dive in to the content of this new book, let's just start with what you guys do, because I think some people hear minimalists, like y'all have made this thing spread like wildfire. They think, you're going to make them get rid of all their stuff. And that's not really the heart behind what you do. It's deeper than that. So could you just unpack a little bit of the heart behind what you do and you've been doing for over a decade?
Of course, yeah. I mean, minimalism is the thing that gets us past the things so we can make room for life's most important things, which turns out aren't things at all. I know when people hear minimalism, they think stark white walls, they think, throwing away everything and decluttering, but it does go much deeper than that. The stuff is the initial bite at the apple. But once you get past that, you can dive deeper into other things. Like our book talks about different relationships, whether it's with your finances, whether it's with people. It's really a tool for people to live deliberately.
The average household has 300,000 items in it. So when you think about that, most of us aren't hoarders when we think of like the TV hoarders, but we are in some sense accumulating a lot of stuff. And that'd be fine if it was bringing us more joy and happiness and contentment and peace and tranquility. It's doing none of that. It's doing the opposite, right? It's stressing us out, overwhelm, debt. And now we're in this position where we have all this stuff. It's not bringing us joy. It's not adding value to our lives. And that's really where minimalism comes in. We've identified a way to simplify our lives, to get rid of the excess, because those material possessions, they're a physical manifestation of what's going on inside us. We have a lot of external clutter because we have a lot of internal clutter. So when we start dealing with that outward clutter, then we can look inward and say, you know what, maybe I do have some relational clutter, some mental clutter, psychological clutter, all of this career clutter that's going on in my life, so I can change that. But it really does start with the stuff.
Yeah. Even as you talk about that, I think about how I feel on Monday mornings when I have gotten things in order on Sunday. When I'm starting the week together, I've got it together. I feel like, okay, I've got my groceries done, all my, checklist of things as a mom and wife and things I've got to get it together. I feel so at peace when I start my week, when I feel like I've got it together. Versus, let's say I fly in Sunday night late and haven't unpacked my suitcase and I don't have, I feel it really is, there's maybe even an undercurrent of anxiety, but it's not even just what's going on with me. It's also, like you said, it's the outward things that affect that. One of the things that I think is really interesting is this is something that creeps in by degrees. No one goes out and buys 300,000 things at one time, right? They don't think it's dangerous. They don't think, oh my gosh, like I've got some real stress at work, so I'm gonna take it out of my Amazon cart, right? And this retail therapy, we don't even realize it's happening. So speak a little bit to what are the warning signs? What are the rules, guardrails where you can go like, hey, like, let's back out of the day-to-day of what you're used to and what you accept as normal for the amount of stuff you have and the amount of stress you endure day-to-day to say like, it doesn't have to be this way. It could be different.
Yeah, I would say that. So if you look around your house, everything you own can fit in one of 3 piles.
Okay.
We call this the no junk rule.
Okay.
And it turns out that, well, we all need some things. So the 3 piles are essentials. Then we have non-essentials, and then we have junk. The essentials are the things that everyone needs. Clothing, shelter, food, like we all have the same essentials basically. Then we have non-essentials. These are things that we don't necessarily absolutely need, but they add value to our lives. Like I can get by without a couch if I had to,
Sure.
but I get value from a couch, so I have a couch, right?
Sure.
Unfortunately, most of the things we own fall into that 3rd category, junk. So we have essentials, non-essentials, junk. And what I've realized is that by having all of this junk, it's actually getting in the way of the things that add value to our life. So when we start removing some of that junk, here's the paradox of minimalism. We actually get far more value from owning fewer things. So the things actually become more valuable to us because they're not watered down by hundreds of thousands of useless trinkets.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that too, because I have found, like, I can relate this to my closet, for example. Once or twice a year, I'll purge and send stuff to Goodwill that's old or I don't like it, it's out of style, doesn't fit, whatever, right? Well, when I do that, aside from feeling freer and it's so therapeutic, which we all know, I can see the stuff I like. I can find the stuff I like so much more effortlessly. So when I go to my closet, every option is a good one because I'm not digging through things that are old, out of style, torn, whatever. And so I just imagine that overlaid on your whole house, your whole life, because they have more value, but you also can find them. You can find them and enjoy them more because that's all that's left are things you actually love, things that you use. Now, in your book, you guys lay this out really interesting. You lay it out as 7 key relationships.
Right.
And it's so interesting that you use the word relationship, you know, when you're thinking, oh, are we talking about stuff? Talk about those relationships, and then I want to dig into a couple of them in particular. Like, why did you lay it out that way?
So we identified, they're basically these 7 relationships that we all struggle with. We wanted to write a relationship book, but it's not just about our relationship with people. There's so many things that get in the way of our relationship with people. So our relationship with stuff, it starts there. Our relationship with the truth, we're often lying to ourselves and lying to others. Our relationship with ourselves, so we have poor health, or we're too busy, we're too anxious, we're too stressed. Our relationship with our values. Quite often we don't even know what our values are. We can't live a meaningful life if we don't align our actions with our values, right? And then our relationship with money, where of course you all know about debt and what stress and anxiety that creates. Our relationship with creativity and distractions. And then ultimately our relationship with people. So we have all of these different relationships and they work together in tandem in really interesting ways. And that's what we really wanted to illuminate with the book.
It's so interesting you say that, Joshua, because I haven't even dug into the book yet. I'm so excited to read it. But even as you talked about that as a quick overview, I think, how many times have I said no to coffee with friends or something because I needed to clean? Yeah. Or because I said no to, let's not have them over because my house is not clean. Or because I don't feel like, you know what I mean? And that's stuff. Yeah. Now, not that like all of a sudden you become a minimalist and you never have to clean again. That's a regular maintenance of our life. But I just think if you had less, you would have less you had to take care of, organize, clean, sort.
Yeah.
And do.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, we think about getting stuff and we look at the cost, the financial aspect of it, but there's so many other costs when it comes to our stuff. So it's our time, it's our attention, it's the cost of repairing the thing, it's the cost of changing the oil in the thing. So we really have to consider what the true costs are behind things because like you just mentioned, sometimes those costs will get in the way of things that really add value to our lives, like being with people or being with friends.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about how, when you talk about your relationship with yourself and your relationship with the truth, I thought those were really interesting when you're talking about love people, use thing. Let's unpack those a little bit and what you mean by that.
Yeah, so I was lying to myself a lot. You know,
okay. Give me some examples.
Sure. I told myself I was successful, right? I had this great corporate career. I was a director of operations for 150 retail stores. So I managed a ton of people all over Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana. And I realized like, I'm what my culture, my society says is successful, but I'm working 80 hours a week. I'm unhealthy. I'm stressed out. I'm actually making really good money, but I spent even better money. So I had heaps of debt because I was trying to keep up with the Joneses or the Kardashians.
Because you could, because it was there. Why not?
Right. And I was always spending toward the next paycheck or the next pay raise or the next commission windfall. And what I realized is, I'm living this whirlwind of a lifestyle and I'm telling myself that I'm successful, but that's not what success is. Stressed out, in debt? Is that a picture of someone in success? No, that's a failure. And so I was lying to myself in so many ways. And the same is true with the self. When we look inward, we realize like, oh, how often am I actually being present? Or am I spending all my time sort of checking off things on a to-do list, cleaning my house, organizing my things? And it turns out that I was living a sort of to-do list lifestyle as opposed to setting my priorities straight and actually living and being aware of the moment.
That so resonated with me. And I know it did with so many women. Listen, like living a to-do list lifestyle. I'm like, yeah, like that's what that feels like. You know, I'm curious. I want to camp here for just a second, Joshua. How does our beliefs play into maybe some of these lies we tell ourselves? Because I'll tell you, even as you talked about like with the debt, you know, I've made tons of mistakes with money and then, you know, got out of debt. And now it's amazing how just one simple belief that I hold has changed my financial future. And this is it, is just because you have the money doesn't mean you have to spend it. So one of the things that's transformed my husband and I's life financially is when we get raises or bonuses or make progress financially in our income, we don't upgrade our lifestyle. And so the margin just grows. And so we have money in the bank. We have a savings account. We have freedom, flexibility. So for fun things, if we want to go on vacation or something, we have the money to cash flow it. Or really tragic things, like when my son was put in the hospital, you know, several years ago, we didn't worry about the hospital bills because we had the money, and money provided those options for that. But it was the margin that allowed that. So how do beliefs that you guys see people hold play into the lies that you tell yourself? Because that belief, like, before was always like, well, I've got the money. Well, I've got the money. I can spend it. I've got the money. I can afford it. Or I bet there's some moms listening right now going, well, you don't know what it's like to have 47 kids and there's stuff everywhere and I'm exhausted and my life is a to-do list. So let's talk about like, what are some of these beliefs of like, it always has to be this way. This is as good as it gets. You know, how do beliefs play into these lies? I think that's interesting.
Yeah, you know, it's another word for beliefs. I think we could probably use the word values as well. Yeah. And it really comes down to, what do you value as a person? So when I was in the corporate world, if you would have asked me, hey, Ryan, what do you value? I'd have been like, well, you know, my health. If I don't have good health, then I have nothing. And I value relationships with people. If you don't have good people in your life, then what kind of life are you living? And, you know, I always got to be working on something creative, and I want to contribute beyond myself in a meaningful way. I want to grow as a human being. But when I looked at how I was spending my time, it was not really focusing on any of those things.
Right.
And what I realized is that those values that I had, I was giving them lip service. Yeah. And I realized like our values are not what we say they are. It's what we actually do. So I think it's so important for people to get clear on what those values are, because, well, like me, I was lying to myself saying, oh, well, here's what I value. But then I looked at what I was doing and it wasn't even lining up or close at all.
Yeah, and in the book, we have a worksheet in there that helps people identify what their values are, because we think there are 4 different types of values. We have foundational values, structural values, surface values, and then this 4th terrible category, imaginary values. And that's what we're all focused on, right? We're so focused on these things. In fact, there is a philosopher called Rene Girard who talked about mimetic beliefs. And we value what our culture tells us to value, what society tells us to value, or now what Instagram or the advertisements on television tell us to value. And there's nothing inherently wrong with those things. When we put those above the things we actually value, we forsake the things that are most important to us. And that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like for me, the secret to living a meaningful life, it's really our short-term actions aligning with those long-term values and beliefs. Yeah. And it sounds so simple, and it is simple advice.
But it's hard to do.
It is, yeah.
You know, I've been speaking on life balance for over a decade, and it has looked very different in my life. The definition of it and what it looks like going from, you know, no kids getting married to, you know, now up to 3 kids. And so it's almost trying to figure, okay, what does this look like in this season of life? And one of the things that I've identified in my own life, but also in everybody that I coach and work with, is much of the stress and anxiety we feel is when there's this disconnect between our values and our behavior. Exactly as you're describing. We say, I love to work out, but I never have time to. I want to go on a date with my spouse, but we never make our schedules line up. I want to play with my kids, but I don't have energy. When there's this disconnect, of course you're stressed and frustrated and anxious because you love these things, but you spend time on these things. Dave Ramsey has a great quote. He says, I can tell what you actually care about by looking at your bank account and your calendar, because that's where you spend your time and that's where you spend your money. But to your point, Ryan, I think many of us have this disconnect and even I'm sure psychologists would have like an actual official term for this, but where it's like we think we're one way, but we overestimate how we actually spend time on these things. Oh, this is what I value. This is what I care about. But we actually spend our time or our money or our energy here. And so it's this gut check moment in a good way, hopefully, to face the facts. Where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your money? Where do you spend your energy? And does that actually reflect what you actually care about?
Yeah, I think when people are looking to incorporate this lifestyle into their life, into their family's lives, I think, the very first step, the first step is to ask yourself, how might my life be better with less? Because that will help people get to the why. But once you understand that, I think before you start decluttering, you really got to go and get clear on what your values are.
Yeah.
And there's actually, we have a worksheet. If you go to theminimalists.com/V, there's a values worksheet that...
V is in the letter V.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yep. And it's just a worksheet that will help people get really clear on what it is they value. And then that way they have a list of what's important to them, what they need to do in their lives. And then they can look at their calendar and ask themselves, okay, how is this lining up?
Okay. So my next question is, and because even as we're going through this, I'm thinking like, oh, okay, we got to go here now. Let's talk about boundaries. Like, how do boundaries play into this life? How do boundaries play into making these changes? Because change is hard. I don't care who you are. Change is hard. How do boundaries play into that with other people, with your time, with your life, with your stuff? What does that look like?
Another word for boundaries is rules, right?
Yeah, okay.
And so Ryan and I, in the book, we have 16 rules for living with less.
Okay.
And sometimes we talk about this on the Minimalist Podcast. We try to identify these different rules. They work for us, but they're really adjustable. So they're not real rigid rules.
Sure.
So I'll give you a few examples of some boundaries that we've set up in our own lives. One is called the seasonality rule. And so you look at any piece of clothing or furniture or whatever in your home, a piece of something from your kitchen, grab any item of the 300,000 items that you own.
Right.
You grab one item and say, okay, the seasonality rule. We also call it the 90-90 rule. Have I used this item in the last 90 days? If so, great, I'm going to keep it. If not, am I going to use it in the next 90 days? Be honest with myself. And if the answer is still no, then I give myself permission to let it go.
And don't lie to yourself. No, you're not going to use it in the next 90 days. Some people, I haven't used it in 10 years, but I will in the next 90. For sure. I have it planned for 3 weeks from now.
Well,
I know.
Those are the three most dangerous words in the English language, just in case. So I'm going to hold on to it just in case. We have another rule called the just in case rule, also known as the 20-20 rule. Any item I'm holding on to just in case I might need it someday in some non-existent hypothetical future, I give myself permission to let go of it because I know I can replace it for less than $20 in less than 20 minutes. Now, first, that sounds like really expensive. I don't want to go around replacing everything for $20 every single day. Well, the truth is you never have to replace these items.
You won't.
You don't. And
it's the safety net for your mental fear of letting it go. It's like, if you want to have it back, you can have it back.
Yes. Another rule for you, we call it the 1 in, 10 out rule. You hear about bars and nightclubs, one person in, one person out, right? Especially in times of COVID, right? Well, now for us, it's like, if I want to bring one new item in, if I'm decluttering, I have to get rid of 10 items. So you go to your closet.
I love this.
You go to your closet. Everyone has that oversized orange sweatshirt with tassels they haven't worn in a decade. They didn't even like it when they tried it on.
Sure.
It was an aspirational purchase.
You said I look good in that.
It's not something I can picture.
No. And so what you do is you realize, like, I've got all these things in my closet I don't enjoy wearing. Why am I holding on to it? Because even if I do wear it, I'm not going to enjoy it. So when I do bring something in, I bring it in intentionally. It's something I enjoy wearing, but I'm also letting go at the same time.
It's interesting with boundaries. It's important that with friends and family, you set up boundaries
Let's
too,
talk
right?
about it. Let's just talk about that.
So-
Let's talk about, can we talk about the grandparents, Ryan?
let's
Can
do it.
The grandparents love their grandbabies.
Yes.
And they love to give them presents. All the presents. In
Yeah.
fact, the larger physically, the more love it shows is what some of them think. And so there is no space for these things.
And it's so hard when they have the best of intentions.
And they just want to love on their grandbabies. How do you have those conversations? Where do you set boundaries? It's like, hey, no more stuff. Because I think this is a real struggle that a lot of people feel because genuinely the grandparents are so excited about their grandbabies, and then it's just more stuff to keep up with. How do you handle that?
Well, the one first piece of advice I'd give is if you want people to respect your boundaries, you have to respect their boundaries. So if you're going out of your way with the the primary relationships in your life, you're going out of your way to respect them, to show them love, to respect their boundaries, then it's totally appropriate for you to go to a friend or family member and say, hey, I know that you love me. I know that you want me and my children and my husband, we want our family to be happy. And in order for us to be happy, we really have a big ask from you. And maybe it's less Christmas presents. Or instead of saying no, maybe you can tell them yes to something else. So instead of saying no Christmas presents, maybe it's you say yes to some consumables, or maybe you say yes to a family vacation. So sometimes you can
maybe like an experience somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's so interesting. So this is funny because this is a real life struggle with my mom and my dad. My dad, I love my dad, but he was one of those that's like the physically larger, the more love it must show. And at some point, and my parents don't really take hints. Like we're all real blunt. We're so close. I was like, Dad, no more. No more. I have no room in my house for these things. And my mom, she's super creative. She's an entrepreneur. She's run her own business. So every time boys come home from her house, she lives like 3 miles down the road. So they go see her all the time. And there for a while, every time they would come home with something. It could be something they made out of cardboard, a cardboard fort, whatever. But at some point I was finally like, no, no, this is staying at Grammy's house. You can make whatever you want at Creative Grammy's house, but it's going to stay at Grammy's house. Because but it is so hard because you love your family. And it's not just parents. It's not just parents or in-laws, or it's any relationship where the stuff is affecting the relationship and your life. And so I think that's a really hard road to walk. Okay, I want to kind of circle back here and talk about what does the future look like? What are the possibilities? There are people right now watching and going, that sounds nice, but honestly, like I can't even picture what you're describing. So describe for us the feelings, the reality, even the real practical effects it has on you, your sense of peace, your relationships, if you are able to live with less and do what you guys outline in your 7 key relationships and your 16 rules. If people read this book and really let it sink into their spirit and do it, what's possible if they do that? I want them to get that picture and that vision. You know what I mean?
Ryan started with a question. He said, how might your life be better with less? If you really want to envision what a simpler life is. And we're not prescribing minimalism to anyone. You don't have to become a minimalist. What we're talking about is living intentionally with less. In our culture, we never stop to consider less. It's always more. Maybe we already have enough of the stuff, and we don't have enough of the things that actually matter to us. There's nothing wrong with things. We all need some stuff. Ryan and I are not anti-stuff. The problem is that we're forsaking the people closest to us. I mean, that's the whole point. Love people, use things. Unfortunately, we're doing the opposite. We are loving our things. We say, oh yeah, I love that truck. Oh, I love that, whatever it is, tacos. I love whatever. And the problem with that is if we're loving things, but we're not loving the people around us, that doesn't make for a very meaningful life. And so what does the future look like? It's a life with less stuff, but those things are much more intentional. Those things we actually get more value from. As a minimalist, everything I own serves a purpose, or it brings me joy. Everything else is out of the way. Now, what is enough today? That changes over time. I have an 8-year-old daughter, and so, but I was a minimalist before she was born. So my life now, for a decade later, looks different from what it did when I was in my late 20s, right? At 39, with a wife and a kid, my enough looks different. And as I continue to progress, that my life's going to continue to look different as I let go of some things, I bring new things into my life, and I continue to question, is this serving a purpose? Is this bringing me joy? And if not, I have to be willing to let go.
You bring up a really interesting point with just the concept of seasons. The house that my husband and I bought 8 years ago was a family that were empty nesters. Their youngest was off at college and they wanted less. And they were in a season of life where they literally needed less bedrooms. They needed less shrubs and yard maintenance. But that house served them well when their kids were at home. And then they were reevaluating and saying, we want less. And I just love that permission you give us as we wrap up of looking at the season of life and saying, what does this look like in this season of life? What is less and fulfillment and meaning? Those things we all understand intellectually we crave, especially in our world of social media and all the things that can distract us. We crave presence. We crave relationship. We crave real connection. And I just love how you guys are showing us through your work, documentary, all the things that you guys do, but especially this new book, how that stuff is actually getting in the way of the things that matter most. And it's compelling us to want to go through that difficult change. So thank you guys so much for being here. Before we wrap up, I have one fun thing I like to do if you guys are okay with it. Just rapid fire fun, completely random, unrelated questions.
All right.
But because y'all are the minimalist guys, I'm really curious how you're going to answer
all right.
Okay, all right. And you both can answer. First thing you do when you wake up in the morning.
Brush my teeth. brush my teeth.
Coffee every morning.
Right.
Coffee is essential. That falls in the okay. What is one thing that you are? It's kind of like it's a temptation for an impulse purchase. Like, do you guys have that? Like, do you even have that? Like, you are at a store, like, ooh, I really want to get.
I wish I could sit here and say, if you read all our books, if you listen to our podcast,
it's never a
if you
struggle.
watch our documentaries, you'll never crave anything again.
Right.
But unfortunately, that's just not the case. Even as one of the minimalists, I still struggle with the impulse purchases.
Okay.
So I make way fewer impulse purchases, but I still have that impulse there, especially when it comes to technology. So like when the next greatest laptop comes out, the next phone comes out, I always have like this impulse where I'm like, ooh, that's shiny, that's nice, that's new.
Yeah.
But then, I ask myself some deeper questions and really decide if it's something that adds value to my life or not.
Yeah.
My wife calls me a jacket hoarder.
Oh, you're the peek inside the real.
Yeah. I mean, you can actually take a home tour on our YouTube channel, and
cool.
you can see some of the stuff that Ryan and I have in our homes. I think if you come to my house or if you see it on our Netflix documentary, it's not like, oh my gosh, these guys are minimalists. It's kind of like, wow, they're really tidy.
I really picture like one folding chair. Like one folding chair, a coffee pot. Like your daughter, she might have one toy. Like that's what I picture when I think of minimalism. But that's so cool you let people see.
Here's a problem with so the average kid has almost 300 toys. They play with 12 daily. That is, and so we have a lot of things that are getting in the way of our things.
You know what's so interesting? And a small sidebar to this, my son, Conley, my middle son, he's in occupational therapy, and she just helps him work on all kinds of things. And she said, I think he's overwhelmed by his choices. Yeah. I never thought of that. Yes. I never thought that the amount of toys would actually overwhelm a child. And so we have stripped a lot away. And he is, isn't that incredible? Even in a 4-year-old, you could see the real repercussions of that. Okay. Yeah. What is just a random weird fact about you guys that someone wouldn't know? I know y'all share a lot in your documentaries and podcasts.
I was an extra in the movie Milk Money when I was in like the 7th grade.
That is super random. I love it. That's so funny, Ryan.
What is a random fact about us?
There's something weird that maybe people don't know.
Oh, wow.
You want to talk about your hair care products?
Yeah.
We did check it before we went live today.
I was the fattest kid in our elementary school. I've known Ryan since we were fat little 5th graders, and I was literally the fattest kid in school.
You're not exaggerating.
No,
like you really
literally, morbidly obese.
Go to his Instagram. There's a picture of him fat, and he had a mullet. And
that's a great
I
look.
wish I could pull a mullet.
There's actually there's a picture in the book as well.
That's right. Okay, so on that, and I know we've got to wrap up. Gosh, I could ask y'all so many questions. On that, when did that change?
Well, it changed unintentionally in high school. I realized that the girls didn't like really overweight guys. But then
girls will motivate you, man.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. But I'll tell you, I didn't do it intentionally, and so I gained the weight back in my 20s. And it took really being intentional with my diet and exercise, and because that's the thing. We are, and by the way, this is a metaphor for life. Our stuff is fine if it's nourishing our lives, just like the food is fine if it's nourishing us. But we're eating for entertainment. We're buying stuff for entertainment, and of course, it's not nourishing us in any meaningful way.
Yeah, yeah. And I love how you guys get to those deeper layers in the book, whether it's about eating or stuff or anything, how we're coping or what are those issues that maybe are coming out. So that's so good. Okay, last question. And this is just because I'm on this kick right now, kind of leading up to the fall, all about life balance. And life balance means a lot of different things to different people. Yeah. What does balance mean to you, or what makes you feel some sense of balance in your life?
It's funny when we talk about balance, we're usually talking about work-life balance, and we're never talking about, and it's always because we're overworked. It's not, we're never over-lifed.
Right. I need to struggle with balance. I'm having too much fun.
Right. And so when I think about balance, I really think about devotion or immersion in whatever I'm doing. So it's like, to me, life feels balanced when it's calm and when I can look up at the clock and realize, like, wow, an entire day passed. And because I didn't realize, I wasn't worried about the time. I didn't feel overly busy. I think too often we are so busy. Yeah. We're too busy. And it's become a status symbol in a way, right? Yeah. And we're lying to ourselves as though being busy by itself is virtuous. Yeah. It's not. In fact, it's quite often the opposite. It prevents us from being at peace.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good picture of that. I'm rereading right now, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. I read it before. I'm reading it again. Fantastic book. But I'm intentionally, even like when I walk from meeting to meeting, I'm just trying to walk slower. Like just trying to like create that calm in a crazy, chaotic world. So that's so good. Okay, Ryan, what about you? What makes you feel balanced?
It makes me think about meditation, because I think, I think about my corporate days when my mind was just constantly running. and I was reacting on every single impulse. And now, as you get older, your impulses kind of, wane a little bit, but I still have them. And I still have a very cluttered mind sometimes. But meditation really helps me balance out.
Yeah.
Balance that out. So I would highly, 5 minutes a day.
Yes.
Really.
Just silence, quiet, solitude, something I know we all could use more of.
Yeah.
You guys are amazing. Thank you for spending time with us. I know people want to know where can they watch the documentary, find your other books, but also this new book. It's not out yet, but it's coming out July 13th. And listen to the podcast. Tell them where they can find you guys.
You can find everything at theminimalists.com. We keep it real simple.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Y'all are awesome.
Well,
thanks for teaching us today.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
All right, y'all, we are at the point in the show where I'm going to answer questions that you have sent in from my fishbowl. So let's see what we've got today. Here we go. How do you balance working full-time at a job, working on a side hustle, kids, self-care, and one-on-one time with the spouse? Oh, yeah. Yeah. I hear you. This is the magic question, right? Like, how do you do it all and do it all well? Let me give you a little bit of encouragement, but I will tell you this is the heart behind my book on life balance coming out in September. This is the ongoing struggle that I feel, so I want you to know that I'm in it with you. And it's the struggle that millions of women feel every single day. I'm sure men do as well, but I think there's something really unique of the shoes that you're in as a woman, and especially working a side hustle as well, because you've got a lot of things going on. You've got a lot of good things going on. You have a lot of irons in the fire. The first thing that I want to call out is that busy is not a bad thing. If you have a lot of things going on, you have kids, you want to take care of yourself, you want to have date nights with your spouse, you've got a side hustle, you've got a job, you love your job, you love your side hustle, those are good things. So just because you have a lot of good things going on doesn't mean you're doing the wrong thing. But here's what I want to encourage you to do. I want to encourage you to prioritize. Now, I know that sounds super simple and super tactical, but what I hear in your question and the struggle that I feel and many women feel is that we want to do everything all the time. Well, you can't do everything all the time. You can't even do everything every week. So what I want you to do is a very practical exercise is to figure out each week at the beginning of the week what your priorities are for that week. What is most important that week? You might have weeks where you are working like crazy. You're working more than 40 hours. You're working on your side business and you are not having a spa day, getting to work out. You're not going on a date night with your spouse. You're just getting things done because it's a really busy season at work. It's a really busy week. But then the next week, it might look different. Maybe the big project that you had to take care of is behind you, and this is a week where you're going to plan date night on Thursday night. You're going to work out on Tuesday morning. You're able to sprinkle in some of those other things that are harder to get to when you've got really busy things going on at work. And then that week is more heavily weighted on those other things in your life that you care about. What matters is that you figure out in real time what those priorities are. Because here's the problem, and I see this all the time. At the beginning of the year in January, we all get excited about a new year and new goals and New Year's resolutions, and we decide, I want to do all these things. I want to take care of myself every single week, and I want to have a date night every single week, and I want to work out 3 times a week, and I want to rock it at my job, and I want to have a great time with my kids every single week. And we set these big, crazy goals. And then we expect that all year long, for 52 weeks, we're going to do all of those things all the time. And that's not just unrealistic, it's not even desirable. Because you can't accomplish anything in your life without focus. So give yourself permission to focus on different things at different times. So in one season or one particular week, you're really focused on your kids and you're doing a lot of activities with them. In a different week, maybe you're taking some time off of work. Maybe you're going on a vacation with your spouse and it's heavily weighted on your marriage and connecting and having fun with your husband. Maybe another week it's busy at work. Give yourself permission to decide what your priorities are in real time. What is most important this week? If I held my feet to the fire for what was important to me back in January, I'd be disappointed because your priorities can and should change. So my best advice for you is each week, whether it's Sunday night or Monday morning at the beginning of your week, sit down and decide, what do I want this week to look like? What is most important to me this week? What do I have going on that I need to work around? What do I want to make sure that I fit in? Maybe some weeks you're working out 5 times that week, and other weeks you're not working out at all. Maybe some weeks you're having great time with your kids, and other weeks you're just getting through dinner and bedtime and you're back at it the next day. Give yourself permission to focus on what matters most at the right time. And I think when you do that, there's not going to be a particular week where you feel perfectly balanced because you've done everything all the time. But over the course of your life and certainly your year, you did spend your time on what matters most. Because as I tell people all the time, life balance isn't about doing everything for an equal amount of time. It's about doing the right things at the right time. When you spend your time on what matters most at that time, you will feel the sense of balance that you've been looking for. It's a great question, and I hope this helps you put this into practice in a very tactical way that gives you permission to focus and set your priorities in real time. All right, y'all, thanks so much for joining me as always. And for more encouragement on becoming the person you want to be, you can visit ChristyWright.com.
MercyMe is coming to Pittsburgh. The Together Again tour with MercyMe, Crowder, and special guest Andrew Ripp, Thursday, October 5th. Bring your family and friends to the PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh for MercyMe, Crowder, and Andrew Ripp live in concert. 3 multiple award-winning artists on one stage for one night. Let your spirit soar, your heart sing, and your faith ignite. Mark your calendars for Thursday, October 5th. Get your tickets now at mercyme.org.